Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Boys Watching Buffy. We're just two boys who have watched every episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and now we're getting into some rewatches. We are your hosts. I am Joe Welkie.
I am Vance Tucker.
And today we have a special guest on the podcast, everybody. It's first time for everything. We got somebody from the show. Adam Busch, welcome to Boys Watching Buffy. Thank you for coming on the show, and we're going to be talking about villains. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for inviting me to come on, and I applaud what you're doing. I think it's a heroic, necessary, and important venture that you're going on.
Dare I say it's a pivotal adventure that we are going on.
Pivotal.
It's a rite of passage for any growing boy, I think.
Yes, exactly.
We can call ourselves men until we get finished Buffy, and we're still working our way there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of content to go through, and we're on our way. But yeah, we'll be talking about, a lot of stuff. If anybody doesn't recognize the name, Adam played Warren Mears, who is one of the biggest bad mofos in Buffy. And we're specifically going to be chatting about, Villains, which is season 6, episode 20. Written by Marty Noxon, directed by David Solomon. The original air date was May 14th, 2002. But before we get into all of that, Adam, do you have anything that you want to plug, how people can find you and see updates about what you have going on?
There's a record I'd love to plug that just came out, and I think the first video for it will be out by the time this airs. It's a collection of Nine Inch Nails covers by Ali Gertz, and it's very much Nine Inch Nails kind of being reclaimed from a feminine perspective, kind of taking a lot of the 90s rock themes and just kind of reversing them or taking ownership of it. It's funny because I saw something when I was reading and looking up stuff on villains. There was this thread on Reddit that said, what music would be playing in the Bronze if the Bronze were around today? And I was like, oh man, I made that record. I really hope they can hear it.
That's awesome.
Hold on one second.
Yeah,
that's very on brand. That's very on brand.
Everyone, please pick it up.
All right. Hell yeah, dude. I think I've actually seen that record around.
It's making the rounds. It just came out, and we just got the vinyl, so we're very excited.
That's awesome.
Ali Gertz is an incredible. She did a record of Rick and Morty tunes and a record of songs of TV shows she likes, and is a very intelligent, pop culture aware woman who has done something really remarkable with this record. And I know if you like Buffy, you will like this record.
That's Hell awesome. Yeah, dude. So everybody check that out. And yeah, man, let's get into it. I mean, I know that we're going to be talking a lot about villains specifically, which is like this big, mea culpa of everything that is going on with Warren. But like, I'd love to know a little bit about like how you found out about the role, like the backstory behind all of that, and just a little bit of, did you know that it was going to lead to all of this craziness? Like, yeah.
When I first auditioned for the show, it was just for the guest role of Warren in the episode I Was Made to Love You.
Yeah.
And I was just auditioning for a guest role, and I remember when I read for Joss, he was sick that day and he had a cold, so he was kind of sitting in the back of the room and everyone else was closer, and I kind of gestured towards him, and he did a kind of like I'm sick, don't come near, like just a stay away gesture, which I appreciate. I don't need to shake hands. And I remember reading, and I remember very quickly, as soon as I started reading, just seeing him peripherally in the back, nodding his head, going,
This guy gets it.
Yeah, whatever. The first couple lines, he had made up his mind. I knew that I'd either booked it or not within the first couple lines, which is very interesting about auditions because they give you a lot of material, but usually it's within the first 10, 15 seconds, And he knew, and I knew. I still had pages to go, but I knew he'd just made up his mind. And then when I went to shoot it, it was only supposed to be a guest star.
Yeah.
And I learned the power of Buffy fans when it was months later, and I was just like checking out at the grocery store, and the woman behind the counter was like, "Oh, you played Warren on Buffy." And I said, yeah. And she said, oh, and you're going to team up with Andrew and Jonathan and form a trio to take over Sunnydale. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it was days later that I found out I got a call that this was going to happen, and they wanted me to come back and team up with these guys. And to this day, I don't know how she knew, but the rumor was correct. And however she found that out, it was news to me.
It's probably like Joss Whedon's sister or something.
I hope so.
Yeah. Did you were you auditioning with scenes from that episode, or were they other sides? Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was scenes from that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like, as is the premise of the show, it's like we've watched it for the first time, but as soon as we saw the episode, I Was Made to Love You, I was like, damn, this guy, this is great. Like, this was excellent, but I had no idea, like, us watching it, I think I think that you talked about how you're like, yeah, we're never going to see that guy again.
Probably. We definitely went on a long tangent about how much of a genius Warren was before knowing how dark it would get.
It was definitely, listening to you guys talk about that episode, I have to be honest with you, it was the first time in my life I'd ever heard people talking about Warren in any kind of, not even positive, but just not negative. You know, normally the reaction to the name Warren or my face is just immediate repulsion and disgust. And the woman Katie Tavini, who mastered this record, I've been working with her for months, and we just got the vinyl. And yesterday she wrote me and she said, "Wait a second, did you kill Tara?" And I said, kind of, yeah. And I don't know if I'm glad she didn't know until now, or if I wish she knew earlier. I don't know. But hearing you guys point out, like, well, we have to admire the craftsmanship. Yeah. I mean, and I think you pointed out, Vance, it was like, we have to acknowledge what a powerful battery he has put into this. And even if I were Katrina, I would want to get as far away from him as possible, but also share the patent on that battery, because holy shit. And that's kind of what I love about this podcast, because you're definitely getting perspectives that only two men who've never seen the show in today's, you know, culture would pick up things like that. And also that this was amazing. You guys were you were like, well, at least that taxi driver didn't try to, you know, you got to give it to him. At least they, you know, because that's how low the standard has gotten nowadays. When it's not a full-on assault, you're just pleased they made it out alive. Or made it out unscathed, which was amazing to hear from you guys.
Well, I remember, like, my takeaway is at the end of the episode, I was like, they should hire Warren. Like, why don't they, like, work with him? Like, this guy has, I mean, through a certain way, they do use, like, the Buffy robot to fight, you know, Glory at the end of that season. But I remember just being like, I mean, they could use that for good. Like, that's genius for good at not knowing the craziness that was about to take place in season 6, and just but I also remember, like, that scene where the robot was just, like, getting pranked by, like, teenage kids, and I was like, they would never do that.
But we've been on the record, every guy in Sunnydale had turned out to be a creep, basically. So when that guy just lets Aprilbot out of the taxi, I'm like, that's the nicest guy. He's like, I'll drive you out of this town. You don't want to be
correct. And it is a correct assessment of the world that women have to live in, taken from today's perspective. Like, it's amazing she made it through that alive, that the worst thing those guys could do was send her in the wrong direction. Like, that's how low the bar has come. And you're correct to point that out, because a woman like that going around is in danger immediately. And it's funny that you've pointed out also, in retrospect, how almost all of the men in the show, even the allies, are not always allies. It's very interesting, you know?
We will get into that with one character in this episode that shares a lot of ties with Warren and Spike, I'll say, in this episode.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then, like, further on, like, you know, they had you come back, obviously, to do the Buffy bot stuff, which is, you know, that's another creep, like Spike coming over and just has a picture of Buffy. And it's like, hey, can you do this? Warren, of course, and all of his, you know, genius, was able to just recreate a, like, just perfect, it can even fool a hell god robot.
Yeah.
And so they brought you back for that, and then you're in the trio and everything. Like, when did all of that kind of start to snowball?
I mean, you never knew when you were going to work next. You were always kind of on hold and just reading the script to see if you died real fast, and then going back and reading it from the beginning to understand what happened. But it didn't even matter if you died, because you could very easily come back.
Yeah.
As you did.
Yep.
Yeah. Did you had any idea you were coming back in season 7 at all?
I always figured every day there was my last day.
Yeah.
You know, and the attention to detail that Joss and Marty have was, at least in my career, unprecedented. There are scenes, even in I Was Made to Love You, that I remember, and I've never had to do this since. We had to go back and shoot again, just because of a slight shift in reaction.
Wow.
That seemed happy. I wanted, happy and confused. So we're gonna stick this one shot from a previous episode onto this current episode we're shooting, because that's how badly we need this look to be exactly how we want. And that kind of care, I think, is one of the things that made the show really good.
Yeah, man. But yeah, then, the trio happens. We're kind of the big bad of season 6, even if like people aren't taking it that seriously. Like, even in this episode, Rack is like, who the hell are you guys? Like, all the demons in the bar are just like, never heard of you guys.
I always tell people that they asked what was my favorite scene to shoot, and I always say that scene, just because I love Jeff Kober, that guy who played the Rack demon, so much. He's so good, and he had a way of just like everyone on set was either in love with him or afraid of him.
I could see
he
that.
Was so cool and actually like encouraged. Like he brought out the best in whoever he was working with.
Were you like familiar with his work before doing
Not
this?
at all.
Wow,
never
like
met
had
him.
that magnetic presence and was able to
Even off camera, just the way people treated him. Everyone got so nervous around him. It was very exciting, and I could tell, this is just based on talent and skill. Like, this guy's just very good. And I remember we shot it, we got it, and I said something like, "What do you think?" And he's like, "Well, we got it. Let's try something different." Like, all right, let's try something different. Normally, he's like, "We got it. Let's go. We got it. Let's go. We got it. Let's go." He's like, "Let's try stuff." All right.
He's one of the few people who's played a character in Buffy before. He was a vampire Kralik in a previous season.
A different character.
Rack. Yeah. He kidnaps Buffy's mom, and
Is that true for Tom Lenk too? I believe, or
I think was he
Tucker's? Was he's Tucker's?
Well, he's Tucker's brother.
Is that Andrew?
Yeah, Andrew's Tucker's brother. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's also like the running joke, is that like nobody knows who Andrew is or whatever. But yeah, I remember, Jeff Kober, when he played the vampire earlier on called Kralik, I remember me and Vance were like, this is awesome. Like every time that he is on screen, there is a presence to him that like is like, oh, there's some real shit going down. And it's awesome to watch. Like, even as Rack, where he's like kind of a drug dealer, vampire demon guy, like it's so dope.
It's such a metaphor for addiction, especially with what Willow goes through, and him being the dealer and wanting quick fixes to things and not being able to stop and not knowing when to stop and getting past a point where there's just no reaching an addict.
Oh, yeah.
It was all very, very well done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, all right. So let's get into villains. Now, I remember when we were talking with you about like, which episode should we do, and we had villains on there, and I remember you said that like you hadn't seen it in like quite a long time. Like, what was your reaction to watching it again?
It was I really, really felt for Willow, and I thought what Allison did was so good, and I don't think I'd noticed how I there were moments I welled up with tears for her, and was rooting for her in a way that I'd never done. Normally I'm just self-consciously watching myself or having a hard time just escaping into it. This was very easy, because when they try and stop her and she's like, no, I'm doing this, and goes off, you felt it. It was just, it's so powerful to have this universe, this big fantastical universe, really touch you in very deep personal, specific ways that have nothing to do with fantasy or sci-fi, that just have to do with loss and grief. And I was really struck by that. It was really powerful. There were 2 moments with her where I just like welled up.
Yeah.
When I watch myself, I just can't believe, I'm like, I swear to you, there's like movies I'm quoting in there. I'm just copying other people's performances. There's a couple lines that you're like, I can't believe I did that. I just stole that from someone or something, some line delivery. It's very embarrassing.
No, but yeah, I mean, the whole thing of just like, you know, it is like what you were saying. It is such a fantastical, crazy world where there's all this witchcraft and demons going around, and then like a gun is introduced, and that's like an incredibly just effective way. Oh yeah, I forgot that guns could just kill people. Like that's just there. And it's the intimacy of like Tara dying, and it's just, there's nothing that Willow can really do about it. She calls on Osiris to see if like she can reverse it again, because she's like, oh, I've done this before. This is old hat for me. I brought Buffy back. We can do this for Tara. And then, yeah, and it's just like, oh yeah, there's some things that are just irreversible. You can't do it. And it's tough.
Yeah, and especially I feel like maybe one of the reasons we like sci-fi or we like horror is because it's nice to know who the bad guy is. It's nice to spot them, and it's nice to know, oh, they look like that, or they're under the bed, or they're in the closet, or they're out there on the street. It's always the most frightening when it's just that nerdy-looking neighbor next door, or that loser kid at school, or something like that, when that's the person you overlooked, you know? That's isn't that what the devil is? It's not the thing. It's that thing you didn't even notice.
Yeah, and like I think there was an episode this season too where, you know, Buffy's having like a mental breakdown, and they're talking about how like, actually I think it was one of the demons that the trio erects, and they make her have a mental breakdown, thinks that she's in a mental hospital, and they're talking about like, oh, the writing this is pretty bad, like. Yeah, you know, the stories that you're telling is now it's just like 3 nerdy guys. You had a hell god before, but like the 3 nerdy guys took out one of the Scoobies. Like that's crazy. Like I always was struck by the power that like the trio had, and how like it felt to me like it was underestimated, because like there's some powerful magic and powerful science and stuff in it. And I will say, for as much as we did kind of say positive things about Warren in his first appearance, I remember in this episode, we were like, yeah, why don't they just kill him? Like,
oh, yeah. No, I'm not saying you guys were fans by any means. It was just nice to see you point out the handiwork, not knowing, you know, what's to come. But I think that's, I'd like to believe it's intentional that it's the person you overlook. It's intentional that it's, you know, ghosting is a very popular form of communication or you know, relationship ending nowadays, and it's a reminder you can't do that to people. Humans will not tolerate that. We can't stand it. There's something in nature. There's something that, you know, you can't pretend we don't exist when we do. Our bodies, our minds, something in us will rebel at some point, either against themselves or against you. So it's important. You know, from New York, there's a rule you kind of don't. If homeless people come up to you, give them change, don't. But you just kind of don't want to make eye contact. You want to just keep moving. That's the New York thing. Los Angeles, downtown, it's the exact opposite. Because they're so used to being just put in buses and shoved downtown and ignored. They don't live among everyone like they do in New York. So they're set aside and told they don't exist. And if you're walking downtown, I would walk my dog. If somebody spares some change, got something, you have to acknowledge them. And if you say, I'm so sorry, I got no bread, they'll say fine and keep walking. But if you ignore them or pretend they don't exist, something inside them gets very, very upset, because it's been presented with this a lot. And it's, oh, you don't hear me? You don't hear me? You have to hear them. You have to acknowledge them. I started to carry cigarettes downtown even when I didn't smoke, because I noticed any interaction with a homeless person, even if I'm not involved, if there's something going on, if I just add a cigarette to the mix, they're like, thank you. Feel seen and appreciated, and whatever is happening is done. I've stepped into situations I'm not involved in and just handed a cigarette, and it's just basic human kindness, you know?
Yeah.
They needed something. They weren't getting whatever it is. That's something. Thank you. And if you're downtown LA, you know that a cigarette, if you're standing outside a bar at 2 o'clock in the morning when they all close, that's now a couple bucks. You can pretty much sell that cigarette for anything you want because somebody's going to want it and you're going to have it. So it feels better than just ghosting or ignoring or pretending it doesn't exist, because that's what tends to happen with school shooters, with people that feel marginalized and isolated and have no one. We just want to keep ignoring them and moving it along to the next thing until one day it just blows up. And there's a bit of that there.
Yeah. So in classic Buffy big bad form, you're pro smoking, right?
Not anymore. Not anymore.
No, I had a situation similar to that when I went to like my first concert ever in like high school. I was like there with a friend, a friend of mine from high school that I just like kind of just knew, just kind of met. And we're at the concert. And I could see these guys coming over. Like, he was like, hey, I'm going to pick on this little guy. And I'm watching it from afar, watching him. I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to step in. And he, like, kind of bumps into my friend. And my friend doesn't know what's happening. And he just turns and offers him a cigarette. And the guy who wanted to, like, try to start something with him just was like, okay, and just took the cigarette and just walked away. And my friend had no idea. This was the Wu-Tang Rage Against the Machine concert. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Damn. Yeah. That's an awesome concert.
That was my first concert.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's starting.
Yeah.
That was your first concert?
Legendary.
Yeah.
Dude, you can't top that. I think mine was like NSYNC and Christina Aguilera.
Mine was Phil Collins.
Yeah. Oh, Phil Collins is good, though.
Yeah.
Phil Collins, great.
Yeah.
He's not bad.
But yeah, I mean, to your point, I don't know how like deep into were you watching Buffy when you were cast on it, or was it just like, oh, now I'm going to go back and watch it?
I had seen it, but I wasn't watching regularly. And
yeah, because like,
back and then,
I mean, the whole story with Jonathan, like, he was like one of those classic ignored people that was like suicidal or whatever. There was a whole episode dedicated to that, and it's exactly what you were saying of like these people a lot of times feel ignored, and then next thing you know, it's school shooter or like suicide type of shit going on, and it's unfortunate, man. But yeah, so villains. Obviously, we're talking about how like Willow wasn't able to bring back Tara after the shooting and everything, and rewatching this and seeing the recap, I think one of my favorite moments in the entirety of Buffy the series is actually from, I think it was the last episode, where you and her like in a conflict at that amusement park, and you have like those like power balls or whatever, like the ball sack of toxic masculinity on your
Is that what it's called?
I can't remember the specific name, but
I hope it's that, because that's accurate.
But yeah, and then you kind of have Buffy in it cornered, and it's like, say goodnight, bitch, and then she like takes the masculinity away, crushes those little ball things and says goodnight, bitch, to Warren, and just like kicks him across. That I think is my favorite moment in all of Buffy, because Buffy the Vampire Slayer is this like very big, important feminist icon of a TV show. And I feel like that moment encapsulated that so perfectly, of just like taking down the patriarchy, taking down toxic masculinity, because like for all intents and purposes, like Warren as a character is seemingly like the embodiment of toxic masculinity, like a lot of it. And dude, seeing that scene again in the recap, I was like, oh, fuck yeah. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
It was extremely prophetic for the kind of white male villain that is in abundance nowadays, that we see a lot of, and they've been given a voice, and they've been given podcasts, and they've been given
whoa.
That's not you guys. I think we know who I'm talking about. There are certain kind of gentlemen that promote that you could see would be Warren if he got everything he wanted. It would be the worst. Do you know? and they nailed that kind of thing. They really did shine a light on something that, unfortunately, was a big problem that needs to be addressed, and still it is. What happens when a certain kind of man feels marginalized and unseen, and the lack of resources that are there, and the resources that do take advantage of them and just bring out the worst aspects possible of them, and kind of encourage them to continue down this path of just absolute selfish, vain violence.
Yeah. I think we even mentioned, like, this is incels before that was even like a term. Like, it's not a new thing for sure. Yeah. Like, it's never like, I mean, even like comedies back in the day where it was just incels, but it was played up as comedy. Like, oh, the nerd, he's, blindfolding a girl and she thinks she's having sex with her boyfriend, but it's actually him. It's like, that is mega fucked up.
Things from very recent. Somebody was pointing out the ending of Ace Ventura.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen that in forever. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think
doesn't quite hold up.
Yeah.
The big punchline is that he accidentally kisses a trans man and then has to, basically commit suicide over it. Because what else could we end this movie with? But the most horrific thing at the time they could come up with, a bunch of straight white men came up with that as the worst thing that could ever happen, and that'll be the hilarious ending of our movie. And you watch it, and it just doesn't ring the same way. And I believe that's progress.
Yeah.
It's an interesting twist for a pet detective movie.
Yeah, I mean, even sometimes watching some of the stuff on Buffy, like we're just like, oh yeah, this is a product of the early 2000s, late 90s. This is the world we were in, and we've made progress, and it's hopefully better. But yeah, man, it's wild to watch some of the stuff.
Yeah. Things are moving very, very fast, and they're changing even faster. And I'm very grateful that this show shined a light on things that definitely needed and continue to need to be addressed.
Yeah, especially if you can watch it. We're watching it like 20 plus years later and seeing stuff that's just relevant now, that's still related, still reflected. So that's what we liked about going in and watching a show that had just a big cult like it's just so popular in like media and everything. And it's a blind spot for us. So us going in and watching it was always just a fun way to see something from a different perspective, and to see it and see what we were missing out on, and see what we could bring to the conversation present day, and from maybe not the necessary target audience from the fan base that we are, So that's kind of what we love about diving into this show and our previous show, Girls, and just checking out a show that it's so big that we just need to like look in and see what we can take from it then,
And Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I always felt, suffered from the same thing that the Grateful Dead did, which is judging a thing by its name. Mm-hmm. You hear the Grateful Dead, you see the imagery, you assume, oh, this is like Megadeth, or this is going to be really heavy, aggressive rock. And when it's the opposite, people are very surprised. And Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you assume it's going to be one thing, and you turn out, oh, this is all like a metaphor for life in general, and like for growing up and a rite of passage. And this isn't like the easiest. You could tell all the same stories and remove the vampires and not have her be a slayer, and still tell all the same stories and just have them be about growing up, Like
definitely.
Stand By Me, or any kind of growing up story, any kind of rite of passage. So it's interesting in that way. And I'm glad you guys look past the cover and got a deeper look inside.
Yeah. It's like if Felicity had vampires in it or something.
Felicity. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's also like a lot of the vampires and demons are representative of problems that teenagers face or young adults are facing, and the confusing times of growing up. And I mean, it definitely hit the nail on the head a lot more times than it missed, like for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And season six is definitely the season that is life is the bad guy, and boy oh boy is it. It is rough. It is a rough season. Yeah.
It's a rough season.
It's got some fun stuff in it here and there, Double Meat Palace and everything, but it was one of those ones where it's like, man, but because we've been always saying Buffy should not have to work. She should just get a stipend from the Watchers. It is insane that they make this girl go to school. Yeah.
Yeah, they bring her back from the dead, and they're like, "Why don't you work at the fast food restaurant down the street?"
Yeah, so wild.
But did you have any favorite episodes that you got to be a part of that you were like, oh, or favorite scene? I know that you talked about that scene with Jeff Kober and you and him and at the, we called it the rack den because it was like crack den or whatever. But
yeah.
But was there any favorite episodes that you got to be a part of that you were like, that stuck out, that you were just like, oh yeah, I'm very proud of how this turned out?
I loved Hush. I wasn't a part of it, but I thought it was an incredible piece of
everybody
television.
That's just fantastic
great
stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's a classic one. But okay, yeah, let's dive deeper into villains specifically. A half hour in, where we vaguely talked about it. But that's the nature of, I guess, our podcast is tangent.
Oh, for sure. I've listened, and it's like 40 minutes in, and I'm like, wow, we're still at the intro of the episode.
There's just so much to dissect, Adam.
There is. And there's one thing I love that you guys do, because it's exactly what you would expect from boys watching Buffy, is you guys are obsessed with pointing out every single continuity flaw you can find, and then just kind of leaving it there. Like, see that? You see that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then it just sits there. It's like your job to point out whatever anybody got wrong, and then just sit with it for a minute, and then move on to the next thing. I appreciate it.
We just point it out. We just want to bring it up for people. Just so
you're never wrong. You're never wrong. I have a hard time not seeing, like you were talking about in some of my fight scenes. I can always see when it's the stunt
body.
guy. It's
very,
very obvious, because I look one way, and then whenever it's the stunt guy, suddenly Warren's fucking ripped. It's amazing. And you see it even in Villains, when Willow rips off his skin, you can see it's me. Yeah. And then suddenly I am jacked. Skinless, but I'd take it because he looks great. It's arms, the whole thing. Really nice. Well done.
The skin was holding you back from your true definition.
That's what it was. Right. Underneath, it's,
yeah, man.
God. Yeah. I love stunt double stuff. I've always loved that.
It did get better throughout the series, I will say. The stunt
got
double
better, but did it get worse because it got better?
Yeah, some of those
I don't
early.
know if you can see in that same fight scene you're talking about, the say goodnight. We're in like a theme park, and you can see it's night, it's day, it's night, it's day, because we were fighting 4 or 5 in the morning at that point. We had been there all night long, and right when we're doing the fight scene, you can see some of the cuts. It's daylight because the sun was just coming up.
Oh man!
And then they cut this way, and then it's dark, and it's light, and it's dark, and I always see that stuff.
Well, yeah, you have the knowledge of like what was going on during the filming. We are watching with like this every time that we bring something up like that. We just blame the remaster because that's what we've been told is the excuse that the remastered version is like colored way differently, and so I just go in and assuming like if there's anything weird looking like that, it must be a remaster issue.
Yep.
Vance, do you have anything that you wanted to bring up? I know that you were talking about how like the similarities between Spike and Warren.
Well, when this episode started, because we had gone on a long tangent about the whole Spike going to go get his soul thing, and how he was just like cursing Buffy before he was going to go get it, and then I saw the recap in the beginning, and he's like, "I'll show you," and I was like, "Oh, did he not go as harsh as I thought?" As we had been riffing about. And then later, that scene where we see him talking to that devil character, and he's like, I'm going to show that bitch. I'm going to show her what's what. And it's a lot of forced mislead that he wants the chip out of his brain, but he really wants to get a soul. They were kind of putting that off to the end of the season. So watching it again, it's like, he sounds like he's talking about the chip, and he's really saying a lot of mean things about Buffy that doesn't seem like he's going to go get a soul because he loves her and he's forgiving her. And it's like on par with some of the way Warren talks about Buffy too. Like he comes in, he calls Buffy a bitch, he says bitch a lot, And I always find that dynamic because there are Spuffies. We always talk about it. They're big shippers of Buffy and Spike. And Spike is a very charismatic character. We love the character of Spike. I love Spike being bad. I don't think he should be with Buffy, like some people do. And it's just some things that he does that has that misogyny that Warren's character exhibits in the same episode. Like when your character's talking to Willow, and he's like chained up, and he's still thinking that he has all the power. It's insane to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the same vibe I get from Spike in that scene when he's talking about showing Buffy, you know. So it's like I know he hasn't killed Tara, but it's
I used to have a pit bull, and she was the most obedient, well-behaved, sweetest dog you ever met. She looked like a tank, but like frightened people. They'd cross the street when they saw her, but she had no aggressive instincts. She didn't even know how to respond in that way. Now I have 2 like 5-pound Yorkie Pomeranians. They were brothers. Friends had puppies and they made it and they needed a home for them. I walk this 5-pound Yorkie Pomeranian, and he can be aggressive because he's so small. He's scared of everything. So like he gets scared of a footstep, and his reaction to everything is, bite or get aggressive. So I have to have one of these, leashes that goes around his neck. He's 5 pounds. And every day when I walk him, we step out of the courtyard, and we walk onto the sidewalk, and the first thing he does is like check me. He stops to be like, excuse me, I am in charge here. I'm obviously in charge here. I'm 5 pounds, naked, being walked around town on a leash by someone who is much bigger than me, and I believe firmly that I'm clearly in charge here. And there's a bit of that with Warren and a bit of that with Spike. He's tied up, he's being tortured, and there's a part of him that's still so obsessed with power and control, or needs that he's like, I'm in charge here. And I feel like he was obsessed with power and control, and Spike was obsessed with love and being in love and how that validated him and what he thought that made him and who he was without that love that they both, unfortunately, would not be in reality in order to hold on to these things, just like this 5 pound Yorkie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and even like in that scene where Warren is tied up in the trees and it doesn't even seem like it's registering to him that it's like he's in trouble. He's just like, I'm gonna get out of this. Like I'm getting out of this. It's like, dude, you're fucked.
Well, that's the thing with characters like that, is that, the bad guy never thinks they're the bad guy. In fact, they know for a fact that they're not. They're the good guy. And the good guy often loses. So there's something about when you believe you're right, or you know you're right. It takes a certain level of maturity to realize, oh, no one gives a shit who's right. If it makes the problem go away, you have won. And sometimes to make the problem go away, you have to say or do things that are compromise, are an expansion on what you think is right, or a stretching of it. And that's called, I believe, maturity and being an adult. But a child like that is like, well, no, Willow, I'm right and you're wrong. And there's probably a part of him that's like, well, you're killing me. I'm somebody's son. I killed and now you're doing this to me and acting self-righteous about it,
Yeah.
Even though maybe even the Bible says Willow has a right to do whatever she wants to Warren. We don't know. But he's grasping with what he can. I'm right, you're wrong, that's all that matters. And even in death, even as, my hand's being chopped off, it's still good. I still got whatever's left. I will fight with, because I'm right. And I think he believes that. And I think he got what he deserved.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, exactly. The dumbest thing, I think, Warren, being a genius that he is, I think it's going into the woods and not trying to get on a plane and flying across the world. It's probably the biggest flaw in his escape plan.
Yeah, I think Robot Warren had a better plan than real Warren.
Just the genius it takes to. Did Warren already have a double of him all ready to go, or did he just whip that up really quick? That's the question.
He had to have 80 of him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah,
we did talk about that. It's like we would have two: one to blame like bad stuff on, one to take the fall.
Yeah. I just wouldn't have a lot. Yeah, I would have one to take the fall for me, but I would make some that didn't look like me so that I could still do my own stuff as a regular person, But if I got in trouble, I just sit that double of me on the couch when the cops come. They arrest that. It would take them years before that battery died in jail for them to figure out it's not me. It fools everyone. Those robots fool everyone. It's amazing technology. I don't know why someone hasn't figured it out.
Yeah, I loved when you pointed out that Katrina, at the very least, would have been like, just before we break up, how did you do that?
Yeah.
Like, I never want to speak to you again, but also, how? Can you just explain the science to me behind this? Because that's amazing.
You're using
very
this
impressive
technology for what?
Yeah.
For your
dick?
dick?
They have to
Just sell it to the military. You could be a millionaire.
They go back to school and what do they do? What are they talking about at school? They had the robotics in the college that they were coming from. Yeah.
But you guys nailed it. You pointed out specifically when Warren says, without anybody asking, it's not just for sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Of course it's not, Warren.
It's not just, yeah. They're companionship bots. Yeah.
How would you feel if your significant other had a sex bot and you were like, you still had a healthy sex life with them, but they were like, look, every once in a while I like to, and it's keeping us healthy and it's keeping me here and in check, and it's just a robot. It's not real.
I mean,
that opens a couple questions.
I was going to say, let's debate this, because vibrators do exist.
This, and I will, just to circle back, you were talking about Spike showing up with the panties and all these things. Well, that's AI now. AI is, here's a picture of them, here's a copy of their voice. Now here's what I want them to do. Is that okay or is that evil?
Ooh.
I'm going to go back to the first. I'm
blowing our minds here.
Let's
two parts.
Let's go to the 2 parts. Okay, so does the sex bot that they have look like someone? Does it look like us? Does it look like someone else? Like that your partner has?
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's the question.
Or does it look like just random hot person out in the world?
Yeah.
Like anybody. It could be anybody. It's not like, a Chris Hemsworth sex robot or like their coworker or something.
Yeah. I think it would be creepier if it looked like me.
Yeah,
I think that'd be weirder.
Then you can have it take the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
No, if it was just some random, like yeah.
Yeah, because April Bot
yeah
wasn't like based on anybody. It was just like the culmination of everything, right? Yeah. I could be misremembering that.
Yeah, I don't think there was a person that they were like, oh, this looked like a girl from our high school or anything. I think it was just.
Was it in Weird Science that they make Kelly LeBrock based off of some ad they saw or some?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you be okay with that? If your partner was like, I love, this model. I'm going to have a robot of them.
I think I'd be cool with it. I'd be way cooler with it if it was like something like they made it up and like it was just like, this isn't a real person. I would be way less okay with it if it was somebody that they knew. And I'd be middling okay with it if it was like a celebrity, I think. That's the scale of it. Because vibrators exist and like I don't have a problem with a girlfriend using that. Like it's just like, oh, my dick isn't blue and it doesn't vibrate. Like I can't be pissed.
But if it was the dick of someone you knew, that would not be okay.
Oh yeah, no, that'd be weird. No. It's like, oh, this is fucking Vance's dick.
I recognize this. Wait a second.
What about you, Vance?
Also, do you have a place to put it? put the sex bot, because it can't be. You got to have a space for it. Like when it's not in use, that's way away from things. Because still a
Fold it up and put it
full-size
in some
mannequin.
luggage.
You can put it in a box like that Bill Hader SNL sketch where he's just like in the box dancing.
Yeah. And it's not like a blow up. Like, here's the thing. It also doesn't have the April bots mentality, right? Because then we get into that. When is it crossing over to AI sentience?
Yeah. What is life?
Is this like a sex bot that's basically level up from a blow up doll? You know, is it like rudimental, like can barely speak but can't like function? It can't make breakfast. I'm saying, like the Buffy bot.
I feel like for the human, whatever that impulse is the same, regardless as to whether it's like a stuffed doll, a blow-up doll, or a incredible robot. It's all right. It's all the same.
Yeah.
I'm seeking and receiving satisfaction outside of our relationship. How do you feel about that if it's not a person?
Yeah. I mean, there's those Japanese sex dolls that are around that are like pretty lifelike looking. Yeah, you said that the sex life is still fine. They just want this extra thing, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, if it's not causing trouble in any other aspect, sure, why not?
Yeah, where do you stand on this, Adam? It seems like there's been a lot of thought put in.
This is
only since listening to you guys.
This is a classic boys watching tangent.
I don't know. I mean, there's a part of me that if it was for me, it would make perfect sense. But if it was my partner, I know I would get jealous. I just know I would.
What if your partner asked you to like, what if like both the robot and you?
Then I wouldn't get jealous anymore, and now I'd be into it.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's just about the exclusion of me I don't like.
Yeah. It's like, I got to be a part of this thing. Got it.
Then it would bring us closer together. I think it really would.
Yeah. What if the robot looked like you then, and then it's just like double the Adam, double the
that's
fun?
even better.
Yeah, I don't know if that's better or worse, but it's definitely something. I don't personally need more of me, but
dude, this is exactly the kind of conversations we need on this. As soon as we got into contact with you, Adam, me and Vance were just like, this is the perfect boys watching Buffy guest to have on.
Yes.
I felt the same thing. I was like, oh shit, they need me. These are soldiers on the front line, and I need to support them in battle. They need me. I'm here. I get it.
We threw up the warn signal, and he saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a question for you. Are you as big a fan of Clem as we are?
Sure. I mean, yeah. Any he's just a great actor, and he does a lot of great theater, and I like the comedic. I like things that are funny and sad, especially at the same time, and he just encapsulate that for me. And you need some just people that are just good on that show. You need some of that.
Yeah, I think that's how I put it. Just like a bright light in this like dark, dark world, and that's Clem for some reason. Mm-hmm. Just not what you're expecting, but just the nicest demon you've ever met, ever.
And I have a feeling if you were to just hear his voice and be told it was a demon, and you were asked to draw what you think it looks like, we would all draw Clem. Like we would all draw just exactly that Michelin Man with the ears kind of thing. And,
the droopy ears, the sad little eyes. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember like our last show that we went through was Girls, the HBO series with Lena Dunham and everything, and we would
also with Danny Strong.
Absolutely,
and Danny Strong.
He's the through line through all of our podcasts and everything.
You got to do Gilmore Girls next.
Oh, people have been clamoring for it. We haven't revealed what show we're doing next yet, but people have been clamoring for Gilmore Girls. We know what show we're doing next, though.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah,
we're not confused or sad or. We have a plan, Adam.
We have a plan.
But we used to do likability rankings at the end of almost every episode, and people that listened to that podcast that followed us over to Buffy were like, well, you got to do the likability rankings for the Buffy characters, and Clem was always at the top, just consistently. Like,
Yeah.
Clem's the best.
Yeah.
Like, every other character had their flaws, like, and things were going bad at some points, and they did some, not great stuff. But then there's Clem, just, a boy.
So happy he made it out of Sunnydale alive. Just so happy.
Well, Vance, I don't mean to spoil this for you.
Oh no.
But apparently, Warren also made it out alive, according to the comic books.
Oh. Okay.
I just saw.
What?
We haven't delved into the comic books, but I just saw a thing like, going down a Wikipedia rabbit hole, and I saw that there was a storyline about how Warren was kept alive somehow. Did you know anything about that, Adam?
I do. I know there's something going on there with Warren, either as the first or Warren coming back, and that he makes a big appearance in those. And I've seen some of the drawings.
Are you happy with that? Were you flattered with the way that they drew you?
Always. That's great.
You can't kill pure evil, huh?
Yeah. That would suck if, like,
interesting.
they start making comic books and you're a character in it and you're like, oh, that's what they think I look like?
No, that happens. It happens a lot, but it does happen on Buffy. You find out what everyone thinks of you when you hear the other characters talking about you. And I remember it was very early on where someone was like, God damn it, Warren and his meaty head. Wait a second. That's not a Warren criticism. That's my head. And you're right. You're right. I wish you weren't right.
We've been talking about that on the Angel show. They do a lot of commentary on the character that is actually physical traits of the actor playing the character. And you're like, you just said that to them, to their face.
Yeah.
They're not in makeup or costume.
That's just my meaty head. It's just my head. It's my face you're talking about. That's my face. That's meaty.
Yeah.
I wish they were wrong, but they're not. They're right.
I went back and listened to our original villains episode, and on that I said, there's no way that Xander gets back with Anya after she was sleeping with Spike, and now she's a vengeance demon. Way off on that. Mm-hmm. That love is too strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
ended up
that was one.
Getting back together, ended up getting emotional after Anya dies. Oh.
How do we feel about Xander?
Is that the question?
Yeah, just in general. How do we feel? There's a lot of people that have been like,
you just opened up a can of worms, Adam.
Yeah.
You have no idea.
I think I do. And it's worth opening because it's interesting. And people always say, go ahead.
I'll let Joe take the lead on this one.
So I am always usually kind of the person that's defending Xander's actions or things that he does that people are like, oh, well, that's just like, that's fucking terrible. Like, we have a whole section of our Discord channel called the Xander Debate Channel, and it gets fiery in there.
I gotta get in there.
Yeah, there's just a lot. Some of it is like,
tell me the sides. What are the two sides?
Oh, I mean, there's literally a person in our Discord whose username is Xander Slanderer, and they've made it their mission to point out everything that Xander does wrong, and even if Xander does something that you're like, oh, that was pretty heroic, he's doing it for like selfish reasons and all this kind of stuff. So I am usually taking the side of like, Xander, while definitely a very flawed character, had a rough upbringing, as we see. I think that there's more good than bad there. I understand why people take issue with some of the stuff that he does, and I've also been there to point out like, oh, that's fucked up. Why is Xander doing that? I don't like that. But I did create a t-shirt that says it says Xander Harris Defender on it, and if people want to buy it, the merch is available.
It's not sold out. It's still there.
But yeah, like, I think, he's definitely got some flaws. There's definitely some, what you would call, microaggressions these days. There's some some misogyny, but also this is 2002. Like, and he had a rough upbringing. Like, this is a lot of like what the culture was back then, which is, unfortunate. And I think that we're in a better place now. But yeah, I think he's a product of his time and upbringing, and some of it's unfortunate, but I think that there's good intentions for the most part.
Well,
Yeah.
I agreed with everything you said up until the intentions part, because intentions, everyone has good intentions.
Yeah, we can go back to every villain is the hero of their own story.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Everyone intends to do good. I agree with what you said, and I think it's very much a product of the times. I just think it's also a healthy thing for women nowadays to always take a second look at the male friend that's been there by their side forever, and just always keep yourself on guard and always protect yourself, and always don't just, because men are dishonest, and no matter how much you think someone is your best friend and just there, it's always good to look after yourself first.
Well, do you ever?
You got Joe.
I was gonna say, do you feel like you could have feelings like that for somebody at the start of a relationship, and as it goes on, and you've been turned down, that it can just develop as a friendship, as we kind of see what goes on with Xander?
I think it absolutely can, if people are open and upfront and honest about it, like you just described. I just don't know of that situation. I don't know of the man being like, I was wildly attracted to you, and I can see that you are not interested in me, so I'd like to pursue a platonic friendship. How do you feel about that? Like, I don't see a guy saying that like that and giving the woman the opportunity. I can just see them sucking it up and doing it. Okay, 10 years from now, this is going to pay off, I swear. This is going to be great. If I'm just, completely dishonest with her and myself for a really long time, I'll get what I want. Unfortunately. And I'm not saying that's Xander. I don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know.
We rewatched the Restless episode and dove into that, and they kind of make it clear in that episode that he has gone past the level where he sees her more as a sister than like a love interest, and what they're trying to do there. And we didn't notice that the first time we watched it, but then watching episodes past that, you see like, yeah, he hasn't really been making a lot of the sexual jokes towards Buffy as much as he used to, or like it's not there. And like now he's with Anya and he's almost getting married and all this stuff. So he has kind of gone past that. And he also had a thing with Willow earlier, which is a more interesting thing when they were cheating on their significant others then, So it's a lot more than just his relationship with Buffy. Like Willow had a diehard crush on him for most of her adolescence. So it's a lot. It's a complicated friend group in general, forced together through trauma and just not a lot of options. We always said that Xander needed a guy friend, but I don't know if any of the guys in Sunnydale would have worked. I think Riley was the closest one. Yeah.
Somebody brought it up that they think that if Xander had like gone down, like took one step to the left, he would have been a part of the trio, which was an interesting.
100%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I could totally see that. But like, he was surrounded by Buffy and Willow and, Joyce and all these like positive women in his life.
Mm-hmm. What they have in common is that Xander and Warren and Andrew and Jonathan is that they were all searching for a family. They all felt rejected at whatever their home situation was, and they were looking for a family. Xander found it. And I think what you said is very astute. If he wouldn't have found it from the kindness and graciousness of these women, very easily could have been a Warren, because that's all Warren wanted. It was one of those, don't accept me, so I hate you.
Yeah.
And if you accepted me, I'd stop hating you real fucking fast.
Yeah.
So and could have a sliding doors with Warren and Xander, or Jonathan, if Jonathan Jonathan felt like the one that was going to be good. He was the weirdest one in the trio for me to be going so hard against Buffy, who had helped him on multiple occasions. Warren didn't really have an interaction with Buffy, and Andrew was just Andrew. So, in love with Warren. Did you know that was coming? The Andrew in love with Warren stuff? How was that played?
Well, for me, it was always just a part of what we were just talking about, which is Jonathan was just looking for a family, and Warren fit the bill at the time. And I think Andrew was the same way, and they both kind of expressed it either through love or through, parental feelings or whatever it was. They just all needed a family. And I think Warren did too. And Warren would create one with his hands rather than have to deal with the responsibility of being an actual adult and being honest. Yeah. So I think Warren was either intentionally or unintentionally taking advantage of that dynamic and kind of forced them into that. And however they expressed it, it was just, that's all we have, Yeah. Once there's another option, you can go to that. But when you have no options, that's what depression is, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Depression is feeling like you have no options for yourself, even when there are always plenty of options, right? Any one of them could have stopped at any point, but you don't feel like that at the time.
Yeah.
Even Warren and Willow, they could have stopped, even when he was tied up. He's the most defiant when he's at his weakest, never giving up. If at any point, if he just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Either one of them could have stopped. Their friends tried to stop Willow. She wasn't going to have it. He wasn't going to have it. They were both far too gone in their addiction and grief.
And to that point about how Xander could have been a part of the trio too. Even in season 7, you kind of see him and Andrew Tom Lank bonding over certain comic book stuff that they were both obsessed with, the characters, and they're talking about this issue, and there's some actors that they are bonding over, and it's oh yeah, these guys are not that different. It's just one of them went this way and one of them went that way, and that's the path of villainy. And yeah, man, it's crazy how if you just take one step in the wrong direction, it can send you down a path of getting skinned in the forest.
And I think we all like to believe, in terms of our own lives, if only someone would have told us. If someone would have told me not to drive that night I had drank too much, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Or somebody in life, I feel like people, they do. They always tell you. You always hear it. It's probably not from a source you recognize or acknowledge, but whatever advice you need is generally, it's out there. And people tried to tell Warren. He did not listen. They told Andrew and Jonathan. They listened. And they did something about it. Warren was too far gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the Xander thing, I know we dived into his character with him being present day person, but I think in the show's balance, his character works as a fun comic. He's a Chandler Bing type character in the flow of the group that works with Joss Whedon's style of humor and interacting and bouncing off of Willow and their quips. So he works in that element for the show, which I think sometimes gets it gets overlooked when you try to dive into the more essence of the character stuff. Is that guy good? It's if it was just taking that stuff out and you're looking at does it balance in the group fun back and forth with Charisma Carpenter's character and stuff? That all worked, and I could see why you're oh yeah, that's what we want to have in here, just to have, and they definitely needed someone to embody the other male side in this show too. So he does have to take on a lot of the crappy guy qualities that if you're if you're a girl watching the show, you're yeah, I have a guy friend that's kind of like this, or he has to embody all of that. So it is a little divisive, just depending on what you're bringing into watching him and your experiences with high school people in general too, So yeah.
Oh yeah.
Just Xander's. This show's you can just debate little things about this show forever, endlessly, which is the sign of a pretty good show. If you can still debate it 20 years later. And no one, we were surprised to find out that there's no consensus in the Buffy fandom. People are so split. They're split on Angel and Buffy. They're split on Spike and Buffy. A lot of people agree that they don't like Riley. We're little Riley defenders.
Why is that?
They don't have chemistry. Riley's character doesn't really have chemistry with Buffy. I don't know if it's more that they were just mad that he also was coming off the heels of Buffy being with Angel, which I think they were liking. And it's pre-Spike hookup stuff. So he's just.
Have you noticed that a lot of the male love interests on the show have eyes that are far apart on their head?
I never noticed that. that's
Joe,
you
that's
gotta
right up
rewatch.
your alley, though, Joe.
That is right
your
up my alley. I feel like I would have noticed that.
Take a look. Outside of Spike, a lot of the men that are love interests, they have. Yeah. Take a look at that. Just trying to start a little conspiracy, see where I can go.
I think we have another boy for our podcast.
Yeah, I know. I feel like this is
exactly. This is the exact kind of critique we like.
That's the insight that I usually bring to the podcast, or just like
something you can do nothing with.
Hey, go back and watch it for a 20th time and see about.
Take a look. I don't want to name names. But you can see it. It's even in this episode. You can see it.
This wouldn't be a complete podcast without doing a little bit of fashion corner, Joe.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, Adam.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of the disco collar?
The collar that goes over the suit jacket.
But I get what they were going for. I see what they were trying to do.
Okay.
I don't think they thought that looked good. I think they thought Warren would think that looked good. Like,
Exactly.
I got some money. What would I buy? Something shiny and flashy. And
It is perfect when he goes into the demon bar. I just love that look. Just going in.
You summed it up so perfectly of like, this is what they thought Warren would think was cool, because it's so awful. And I mean, look, I don't know if you know this, but like I did like a video series called Joe's Fashion Corner for the podcast, where like I would rank like the best and worst dressed characters on the show. I apologize to admit this to you, but Warren was consistently pretty fucking low on the list.
it's amazing that you think that I would personally care. You're absolutely right.
I don't want to step on any toes. You did a great job with it. You did a great job with it. but goddamn, those collars were so huge, and I could not stand it.
There's one I know. I remember this. Maybe you can remind me of the episode, but I know I'm wearing a huge collar and a jacket, and I get into like a fight with Xander. Do you remember this? And he clocks me.
Yes, I believe this is the episode where you are trying, like where Warren is trying to win back Katrina's love in a bar. Yes. And the collar is so big, and there's also a design on the collar too.
Yep.
It's like a weird, like kind of like tribal tattoo design on there. And I that one still keeps me up.
I think it's the episode before this one. I think it's the episode before this one, because you get it's when you get the balls and you're stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember specifically because we did the way it works with a punch like that is the person just, if this is their head, you just go like this in front of them. You don't have to come anywhere near them because the camera's here. So you just go like that, and if the microphone goes like that, it really looks like you hit something. And on the first take, right on me, Nick punched me right in the face. Clocked me right, completely accidental. And I remember like my head rocked back, and I went back, and I remember thinking, I had this thought, man, he really hit you. It's gonna look great if you can remember the line you're supposed to say right now. And I have no idea what the fuck it is because I just got punched in the face. So we couldn't use that take, but I wished we could have, because it must have looked the most real.
Oh man, that's the suck. Like you take it and you're like, okay,
yeah, and it's right on me, and I'm supposed to say something very funny that I could not remember because all I could see was flashing lights.
Did Nick had a look on his face like, oh my god, I just punched you too? Like it was that?
Oh, it was he was. Yeah. He felt horrible. It was a complete accident. It happens.
Yeah,
it just happens.
It's really hard to deliver that line when someone's like that.
And then just blank.
You just look back at him. He's like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's like your worst nightmare as an actor is to accidentally.
Yeah.
But I didn't care. I just wished I'd remembered the line.
Yeah.
So playing Warren, was it just a lot of fun, or did you find it challenging?
It was so much fun to work with Danny and Tom, because we're still friends, and it was just we got really close really fast, and it was always so wonderful to see what they were going to do, and we got along so well, and we just loved hanging out and just talking shit, and it was the best. And to this day, I'll never have a project where I get to do as much, where I get to play the good guy, the bad guy, the monster, the comedy, drama, stunts, jetpacks. Like, you're never going to get to do all of that in one gig. It was like a crash course in everything you would ever get to do in Hollywood. Even that scene we were talking about, walking into a bar and then sitting there and having a conversation with the people next to you and then seeing something on the news. Like, getting to do all of that was just, it never stopped. And then getting to play the First or Willow, like, you're not going to get to do those things on, I'm not. I doubt that'll ever come up again, you know?
Yeah.
Even if it's a big production, usually you're just kind of playing one character. And as a character actor and someone that's for hire, that was a rare opportunity that I'm so grateful for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really
I feel
does
like
show the range.
Yeah, I feel like we also noted, like, scenes with you guys that we could tell that you guys are just having a blast doing that. Just like when you're sitting in your basement and you just got like a bunch of money and comic book stuff all around and everything. It's like, dude, that's got to be so fun.
Yeah.
And dude, you absolutely killed it too. Like, so good.
And Jaina Svensson loved bringing you guys on and writing for the trio, right? Like, we were surprised at the trio when in season 7 when that you show back out. We're like, he's back again, and we see who wrote the show. We're like, okay, yeah, this is bad versus episode. Like, I'm gonna keep writing the trio into stuff, and it's great. Yeah,
Jane is amazing, and I think she had a particular affinity for the trio, and Jane and Drew were really good at writing for them. I think they must have related in some way. We all do. You know, just to people that feel a little marginalized or a little not listened to or a little ignored, you know.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of cautionary tale of what can happen if that goes untreated for too long.
Yeah, and that's what makes also a great villain too. Just like something that you could be like, oh, I kind of identify in that a little bit, but oh shit, does that make me bad? Maybe I should change my ways, or you know what I mean?
Yes, and yes, you should, Joe. We all should. If we're relating, it's a cautionary tale. Absolutely, we should.
Do you remember filming the "We Are as God" scene in the tunics?
I do. I do.
Was that a short little section, or was it longer than it seems? Was it more of a production than it would seem for what's in the episode?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a short bit. Yes, we probably only shot for like a half hour at the most, 20 minutes. But that was an elaborate and difficult setup. I remember something, is there a unicorn or something behind us? Yeah. There's some animal. And something with that animal, they could not get it to do whatever they needed it to do. And it took a lot of time to get the animal to face, like just... which is often the case in television. You just have enough time to kind of get it on camera and move on. And getting us three and that animal to do what they wanted all in the same shot was a lot harder than it seemed. Yeah. And it was that, the kind of feeling where you're prancing around in a toga in your underwear, screaming, "We are as gods." And then you're just kind of looking like, is this good? Is this working? Is anybody, what are we doing? I feel very silly right now.
Yeah.
But hopefully that will shine through and the honest emotion will be endearing. But it's always, you always spend less time shooting than you expect and more time preparing for it than you would believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's also to your point of like, you'll never be able to do shit like that in another role where it's like 1 second you're being skinned, the next you're in a meadow with a harp screaming, "We are as gods." Like, that's so crazy.
and being tied up like Jesus with my shirt open and tortured. And as an actor, you're like, how am I going to do this? It's television. There's not going to be a lot of rehearsing. We're not going to, it's not like a film where you're going to really go over it and find out what the director wants. And I'm wondering if you could tell, there's two kind of directors in television, and it switches off on Buffy. It's either a writer who became a producer who is now knowledgeable enough about the show that they can direct, or it's a person from the camera crew that has been elevated from DP to a director. And those people are much more visual, and they're used to kind of treating actors like they're, army figures, like just props to be lit and moved. Was it on? Great, moving on. And the writers tend to not be as interested in the exciting shots, but make sure every line is motivated and make sure the acting is. And I feel like you can tell in the episodes which director is directing one. And when you get to the woods and you're tied up and you're like, how are we going to do this? Well, it was freezing. It was so cold that I couldn't stop shivering. And I realized this looks really good. And in between takes, they're like, we can take you down, but it's going to take a lot. And the implication is...
Yeah, that's what you're going to stay.
Can you just stay up there?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I can just stay up here. Because actually, when they yell cut and everyone goes and I'm still strapped here, like, this is working. I feel terrible. And this is really good. And I'm grateful for the cold. And I'm grateful that I'm staying up here because this is becoming real.
Yeah.
And that's all I want. All I want is for the shot where Xander really clocks me for me to remember my fucking line. All I want is for this to look and feel real because Willow and people that loved Willow and Tara deserve this. And they deserve this to be as satisfying as it can possibly be. And I love that they found a way to do that with just a very quick snip. Just bored now, done.
Yeah.
And then everyone just flinched and could feel that, You would assume something that horrific and torturous would have to be long and drawn out, not just, but that's sometimes what death is like. It's just a flash and it's done and you can feel the pain in that. And there's something about the way the body leans back and then forward and that she is not even the least bit satisfied. Like a true addict, that did nothing except more. Off we go. And I cried for her. I really did.
Yes, it's one of those endings that I just imagine watching that. I mean, I'm trying to go back to like us seeing it for the first time because we had no idea what was going to happen. But I just imagine like without the internet being what it is and social media being like what it is and having to watch this live on TV and then just going to school the next day after watching this and just like, what did you see Buffy last night? Like, what was? Because it just ends. It ends so abruptly you can't even get your bearings when it just clicks off and you're like, wait, did she just kill Warren and she just disappeared? Willow just flayed a guy? That just happened on TV? Can you even do that on TV? Like, it's so jarring. It's so shocking. And that's coming off the heels of seeing Red when we see Terry get shot. So it's like just back to back, just...
At Vance, I felt the same thing because, I hadn't seen the show in a while and it's been a while since I watched a show you couldn't binge. And I had that feeling because you have the wrap-ups there. And I was like, wow, that was a lot of shit that just happened. And then, wow, that was a lot of stuff. And if I deeply cared, and then Willow goes off, you're just like, oh my God, I got to wait another week? That's a lot of speculation, a lot of feelings to keep in check until that next week because so much happens. And it really is, I think, the testament to good television and good writing.
Absolutely.
And you know what's exciting? It's totally irrelevant. I just thought you would get a kick out of that. When you're an actor on a television show, you get paid for being in the wrap-up or in the coming next week. As if it was a separate episode. So we're always so excited to just be in those, because it's a separate, and even if you're not in the episode, if you're just in the coming next week, you get paid like you were in the episode. So we're always so excited to be a part of the plot that will, bring that. But the comic book and stuff, no, you don't get. I didn't even know until I was signing it at a thing. I didn't know it existed because they own that.
I had no idea about that. That's an easy paycheck. You just old scenes. Hey, last time.
Yeah, anytime you're watching a show and they do a previously on, any of the characters you see in that, they just got paid as if they were in the episode because they are. They're in the episode.
It's technically part of the episode. It's
That's awesome.
Yeah,
it's
I wasn't
something.
even thinking about that.
Yeah.
No, why would you? I mean, if you're thinking about that, then they're not doing their job well. If you're like watching the show and you're like, I wonder how much that guy got paid, then they're not doing a good.
We've been thinking about some weird stuff, so this fills on par of something we would think.
Okay, good.
Yeah. This does sound like something that we would bring up and debate about.
Speaking of Tara, did you have any? I don't believe you had any scenes with Amber Benson in this show, did you? Did you guys cross paths in this show? trying to remember.
It's an interesting story. On 9/11, I was flying back from New York on a red eye that left at like midnight and landed at some point 6, 7, 8 in the morning. It was a weird flight. They made us change planes in Chicago when we weren't supposed to for no reason. I never got an explanation on that, but it was interesting because by the time we landed, this had just about happened in New York. They didn't have any of our luggage, and I had to work on Buffy that day. So I ran home, and then kind of the news came out, and I called like, "Are we still working?" And they said, "Yes, just come in and we'll figure it out." And I went into work. It was a nightmare. Everyone was distraught. People were inconsolable. Actors and crew couldn't work. Everyone was figuring out what to do. And basically all of the scenes were scrapped because no one was really able to work. And I said, "I'll work. If there's something you can shoot, we're all here. I'll do it. I'm able to do it." And Amber was also like, "I can do it. If you guys need us, we can do it." So they said, "Okay, we're going to shoot really quickly." You can remind me of the episode, the scene where they plant like a chip on Buffy. We plant a chip on.
That's
we
like
pass in the
cereal.
school hallway. They're like out in the and it's the only time Warren and Tara cross paths in the same shot, because even the seeing red were separate. She's in the house, Warren's outside. That's the only time the two characters actually cross paths, when I placed that chip onto Buffy or one of them, something like that.
Yeah, that's in
so we
Life
shot
Serial.
that Life Serial,
Yeah.
So we shot that scene on 9/11. It's the only time we were on camera together. And it was like, I mean, we'd shoot and then everyone would go back to Video Village where you watch the playback, but it was just the news on the monitor, and everyone was just watching the news, and then we'd shoot again, and they'd come back, and then we'd just watch the news. And then at some point, I remember the director was like, "Okay, this is like, we can't focus. What are we? It's heroic. We're all trying to pretend this is normal, but this is not. We're just going to end the day. Thank you so much for coming." And I remember one in the background went, "Woo! We got it!" It's like, no, we didn't get it. We didn't get it. We're just going to end the day and call it.
That's
amazing.
Incredible.
Jeez. Yeah. Just wow. That is the one day you guys cross paths on the screen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Damn.
I wasn't even think. Yeah, I forget if we talked about, because I know we talked about when 9/11 happened during the whole, like, because Joe always mentions the date that the episodes come out and stuff, so we always have to like keep that in mind. We're watching a show and we're like, oh yeah, this is like happening during that time. So yeah. And yeah.
Well, I remember seeing on Bill O'Reilly, the O'Reilly Factor.
Oh yeah, the no spin zone.
That was it, and his last piece of the night was episode of Buffy. There was a scene between Spike and Buffy where they like have sex in a club or something, and he was just showing this clip and being like, "Is this what we're showing our children? Is this acceptable for network television?" And he took calls from all these people saying, "This is a nightmare. This is ruining society. This is the worst thing ever. We need to get this off the air. What can we do?"
That's not surprising. From Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah.
That's how you know you're doing something right.
Yeah.
No, that's how you know you're doing something left, Adam.
This has been the No Spin Zone.
Oh my God, that's great.
Yeah.
But that was the context with which this stuff was being taken. There was a generation of people that, I mean, listen, I started on children's television, and I was on a Nickelodeon show, and I played the Xander to a actress who was a detective. I was the best friend, and she was the first Asian woman on the cover of TV Guide. And simply because of that, to this day, there are kids and people that are like, "I didn't know I could be on television until I saw you. I didn't know it was even a thing until you were there. And just getting to see that from her perspective, what Willow and Tara did, and for so many people seeing that relationship for the first time on television, it's life-saving. It's you can't put a price on what that did for people. So
Absolutely.
I deeply understand the anger that comes up even today when people see my face and their first instinct is, oh, you took that thing away from me.
It's just great storytelling, though.
I apologize. I didn't leave you room to do much with that. I just kind of sat at your feet and said,
you grow up, you watch these action movies, and it's always like the guy and his girlfriend or wife or someone, love interest, James Bond, the girl dies and he goes on a murderous revenge spree. That's like 90% of 80s and 90s action movies. It's like, oh, they blew up my family and now I'm out for revenge. This is just that with a female character doing it for her significant other, her partner, that's all we're doing differently in that. And it's so much more motivation.
You correctly pointed out, everyone's flawed. And whether that was just in watching it from, now and looking back, we can see that, or whether it was done by design like that, I'd like to believe it was. Everyone's flawed. No one's perfect. Demons are evil for the sake of being evil. That's what they do. What's much scarier is when the demon is that kid next to you. Mm-hmm. That's so much more frightening. And the fact that both of those things existed in this show, unless people do a deep dive like you did, they're never going to know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean,
going to assume,
I think that, you talking about how important the Willow and Tara relationship was, and Warren totally got what he deserved. There is an interesting debate in the episode between the characters where Buffy is just sitting with Dawn and Xander and just being like, no, we don't kill humans. And Xander's like, why? I mean, he's just as bad as any vampire that you kill. What's stopping us from just going after Warren? Why can't we do it? And Dawn's like, yeah, well, he should die. And it's I know that I was like, yeah, fuck Warren. Dude, this guy is a menace.
But what does she say? She's like, our world has a way of dealing with people like that.
Yeah.
And anyone watching that is being like, yeah, but that shit doesn't always work.
Yeah.
Xander says that.
I think Xander says that too.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. It's just, and then
it's so nice that it comes from the mouth of babes, of the youth, is the one that's like, here's the truth.
Yeah. No,
it's that debate of should Batman kill the Joker? And I'm always like, yeah, Batman, break that rule, man. So many people have died for you keeping this one little rule alive. The Joker's gonna escape. He's gonna escape. I mean, we love the Joker for the character. We like Spike. We like the bad charismatic character. You want to see the villain do stuff. But when you're having that debate, it's like, Batman, you should really just put a stop to this. So,
even to Warren's credit, if Willow doesn't do that, I'm fully convinced that he would have gotten away with it, or he would have found some way out of it, because he's just standing there like, I'll get out of this. This is, he fucking has all these robots and is a technological genius. He would make a body double to take the fall for him and then go off to, Mexico or wherever Jonathan and Andrew went to. So I'm fully convinced that he would have probably gotten away with it. And it is just desserts. No matter, it is fucked up. It sucks that Willow felt like she had to be in that position or whatever, but hey, man.
Well, do you think redemption would have been possible for him? If he went to prison, if he did time, do you think he could be turned around?
Does he go to Africa?
If you were to look at Willow in that situation, you wouldn't be like, Willow will come through this. She'll be okay.
Can he go to Africa and get a soul if he goes through a couple of trials? Because it seems like that's what sent...
yeah, but Africa's just going to be a beach in Santa Monica. It's going to be very obvious, too. That it's just a beach in Santa Monica with a hut. I was somehow offended by it. I don't know why.
No. You look at it, you're like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I think that when that scene showed up, we were like, hey, that's just Temecula or something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do I think that he could be redeemed, though?
Not in our prison system. Our prison system isn't
Sure. I just meant the possibility of it because we look at Jonathan and Andrew like, well, they could. Some of them did.
Yeah. It seems like Warren's too far gone. I think he's just too far gone and too cocky and sure of himself that he would ever see. First, you have to admit that you've done something wrong, and he can't admit he's done something wrong even while being chained up. He's like, hey, I just tried to shoot your best friend, and I didn't. Like,
the problem is all of this is also describing Willow at that time.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and
she wasn't listening to reason. She wanted revenge. There was no talking to her. She was not going to listen to reason, and this was going to happen. And
but she's the main character.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about human redemption, not the number on the call sheet.
She's in the intro credits, Adam.
Willow does get. I mean, we talked about this when we get to the next season. That like Willow's redemption. I think in this episode we were wondering if Willow's going to be the big bad of the next season, but they kind of just redeem her quickly. Her redemption's very TV redemption to everyone forgiving her and all that stuff. I mean, we've had that issue with the beginning of the season bringing Buffy back to life. Like me and Joe correctly predicted the reactions of Buffy and Willow when she brought her back, but we were arguing because we had different opinions. Like we were both right, but we were both arguing that it's no way. Joe felt that Willow would feel like, hey, I didn't get a thank you for bringing me back. And I thought Buffy would be pissed that she was brought back to life after sacrificing herself. And both things were true.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I just never felt, at this point felt like Buffy never came down on Willow. Like she always just like, you're my friend, so I look past everything you do. And I just needed that one moment where Buffy just lets her have it. That's all I need. I just needed one scene of Buffy just saying like, no, you did this, you're selfish, like call her out. And even after all this stuff, she still kid gloves her even in the next season when she comes back, and she makes them invisible and they can't see her and stuff. And Buffy's like, yeah, hey, it's cool. Are you okay? I'm like, yell at her, please.
Yeah.
Do something. But yeah, Willow, I guess Willow has been good for so long that they get, I think it's just the audience has so much sympathy for her already, but less sympathy for Warren. That it'd be harder. But I don't think there was any, I think if you put Willow's thing as addiction and you blame the magic as a drug for what puts her that way, and not just
it was
grief.
The grief. I think it was both.
Grief. Yeah.
If your friend had a tragic death and then fell into meth and was a monster because of it, you would be sympathetic and want to help them. Even if you saw those demon eyes, you'd be like, dude, you are, and we need to.
They have this thing that like, we can get her off the magic, we can get her back to being silly Willow. Mm-hmm. But with
if only our friend Anya wasn't a dealer.
Anya's a vengeance demon now, but let's not even worry about that. That's for next week. But yeah, Warren is just there. That was just deeply ingrained in him.
I think it's tough because we don't have Warren's backstory, and like going back to the Xander could have been a part of the trio thing. I think a lot of the sympathy for Xander is we get the backstory of who Xander is and like how he had a rough upbringing and potentially abusive parents, alcoholic parents, and we see like what a shit life he's had, and also like trying to fit in. Like we don't really get that from Warren, so it's harder to imagine like where the goodness like left him, and where like it could be redeemed and like put back in. And he also doesn't seem to have the same support system as other people. Like
that's very true.
His support system, he was kind of, he was the leader of the trio. It seemed like Jonathan and Andrew, it seems they could be more easily redeemed because it was like they just got caught up in Warren's crazy antics or whatever. But Warren never really seemed to have, I mean, how did he get a fucking girlfriend in the first? I mean, Katrina, are you kidding me? She was with Warren? How'd that happen?
Oh, I think what you're saying, it really comes down to like Willow has the magic that you can say, oh, if you get rid of the magic, she'll go back. And Spike has attempted to rape Buffy and is still forgiven in the fandom. But it's like, he didn't have a soul then. So if he has a soul, then he's fine. Warren doesn't have that like one little thing of like, if he gets the scepter, then he doesn't have the thing. You know, like, it's after the balls break, he does the most damning thing possible. So it wasn't like the magic of those balls were what were making him go insane. It was there. But everyone else has this. If you take this one thing away, the bad thing that he did was mostly that thing, and you can forgive him. But Warren doesn't have that.
Warren showed a weakness and inability to grow or compromise or see outside of himself from the beginning, from his relationship with Katrina, where basic human adult relationship stuff was so far beyond him. He chose the easy route every time. And like we were saying earlier, he was given too many opportunities to stop and turn around. Even while the bullet was going through him, he could have shut the fuck up and just turned around. And he never, ever did. And every once in a while, when you are handing that cigarette to the homeless person, you're like, oh, there's nothing behind there. Either through drugs or mental illness or just too many years on the street. Like, there's no reaching you. And I have this pit bull here, and I'm really scared about what's going to happen. So I'm just going to walk away because I don't think there's any reaching you. And I think that is the difference between Warren and Willow. With him, there was no reaching him at that point. Yeah. There was nothing, you know, even the sight of Katrina, or if you were to see his mother or anybody, I think you know everything you need to know about his relationship, that when she was trying to conjure up what would affect him, she didn't go for his parents or anyone because he, like you said, he had no support system, just his ex who's going to judge him correctly.
Yeah. And I mean, and he was already planning to turn on Jonathan too, like another fan favorite character. Too. So it's like he was already just digging himself that grave. So I mean, it's a great character. I mean, it's such a fun build to see that character throughout season 5 all the way up into. And me and Joe were talking beforehand of how pivotal the Warren character has been. Like, the Buffy bot plays a role in the season 5 finale, and then you're big in the season 6 finale. Like, it's a major role coming from just this one character in this one episode that you're like, oh, we might not see him again. And yeah, it's really good.
That's what it was like shooting it. You never knew if every day was going to be your last day. You never knew.
Yeah, and like you said, like, you came in, you're just like, oh, this is just a guest role, maybe one episode. Hey, this will be cool. I'll be on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and April was supposed to be Britney Spears. That would have been cool. Or,
I forgot about that. Yeah.
But then, like, just the seasons keep going, and it's like Warren keeps popping up. Putting into motion all of these crazy plans of, you know, they use the Buffy bot to beat Glory. Then very key villain for all of season 6. Then you come back as the first evil, and you're putting some plans in motion to bring Andrew into things and try to kill the potential slayers. It's like, from that one episode, I would have never thought what an integral character Warren would have been. And like, throughout, I was always delighted to see your portrayal of it, because I mean, again, dude, fucking knocked it out of the park. So good. And yeah, it's crazy how shit can just snowball like that.
Yeah.
In real life, and
yeah. I want to bring up 2 things from the episode that I felt were funny of villains. The one that we brought up on the podcast, Joe, is when Willow yells at the Osiris god and then like flinches in pain after like taunting her and be like, you can't do this. And she screams, and it's like, ah. I thought that was just so funny that Willow's power is so strong, even before she gets the dark magic books, that her scream just like put this like
power
super
of grief, man.
God,
do it to you.
And
it's such a unique tone where you can have such serious drama and hilarity within the same scene.
Yeah,
and
I mean, even in the woods when Willow's like confronting Warren, and he says something like, "Oh, I didn't mean to do it." She's like, "Oh yeah, you just meant to kill my best friend," and he's kind of like, "Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess."
You want to split hairs, I guess.
In the scene, I'm not a medical expert, But the scene in the hospital when they're doing the surgery on Buffy, and the doctor goes, "We got to stop that bleeding," and then the nurse goes, "Where?" "Over by the left ventricle." I was like, "What are you not looking at the same thing?" It just cracked me up. I was like,
See, boys
where?
watching Buffy, that's what you get.
Yes, sir.
Where?
We just point it out, and we just have it sit there.
It's nothing more to do with it. You just got to point it out.
What am I supposed to do with it?
Was there anything that you recall, Adam, that you're just like, what's a plot hole or something that you could leave out there for the people?
A plot hole?
Or
Just a
little
thing
funny
that
moment.
you noticed. Something you noticed.
Oh, I don't know. I'm too busy trying to validate everything to find out.
I guess you were talking
focus on
about
what-
the body, the stunt
There's
doubles.
stuff like that
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And night and day and,
Night and day.
and continuity.
Yeah.
There was certainly a moment where a scene I had with James where he was laying down on this table and I was helping him with his chip or something, and in between every take he would go then he'll cut and he'd go I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Vampires don't breathe." Shit. You're operating on a whole other level.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
true. He didn't want his stomach to look like it was rising or falling when he was laying on that table.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Then you give him a
it's,
cigarette and he's able to blow that smoke, baby.
See, we don't talk about that.
Don't get us
Doing
started
that
on
because
vampire
cigarettes are
anatomy.
cool. Exactly.
Oh man.
So are you watching any shows these days? What are you watching? Are you watching anything good? You want to any shows?
Oh, right now I'm watching the Menendez story.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
How's
heard
that
that's
going so far? Haven't
excellent.
started that.
Oh, I just laugh and laugh. My God. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember the case, so just it's all so unbelievable and all
Yeah.
so true. It's amazing. I'm obsessed with interrogations. It's my
Oh.
favorite thing to behold on YouTube or on TV or anywhere. I'm obsessed with situations where because it's almost always like this, where a person is having a life-defining moment. It's like life or death for them or for a loved one, either medical or criminal or something, and you're going through this experience for the first time with no knowledge of how this works and how this goes. And the person you're dealing with is someone who does this all day, every day, nonstop. And that dynamic to me is so fascinating. It's such a crazy power imbalance, and it creates such unique things. I'll watch real-time interrogations on YouTube just in their entirety, just to see it all play out, to see how patient these detectives are and how cocky these suspects are, and just to see what happens, and to watch innocent people confess to things that they did not do due to the pressure and uniqueness of this situation, and to watch criminals think they know better and think they're getting around this when they're not, and all the psychological warplay at stake, where the way the detectives always sit in front of the door to kind of imply like freedom's behind me. You got to get through me to get there. So if you want to leave here, you better give me what I want. And then the giving of the snacks and the taking away, leaving them alone for long periods of time, coming back. I love that stuff. I'm obsessed with that. And I can
I
watch
didn't
it.
know that
Have
those
you
were just
seen
on
the show?
YouTube.
Yeah,
that?
just-
I didn't know that interrogations are like just on YouTube that you could watch.
For some of the biggest cases that exist, it's public domain. Like you can either request it if you want to see it, or it's just readily available. The best one you can watch is the Chris Watts case. If you are familiar with that gentleman who annihilated his entire family in Colorado, someone's going to do something with this at some point, because this man murdered his wife and family and then went to work thinking they're not going to find out about this for a couple days. But his wife had a doctor's appointment the next day. So while he's at work first thing in the morning, the neighbor comes over, is like, "We're supposed to go to the doctor. Where are you? Where are you? I'm going to call the cops." So almost from a couple hours after this man murdered his entire family, you get body cam footage of him coming home to talk to the cops, then going to a 6-hour interrogation, then coming home, then going to the next interrogation the next day, and then getting led right to prison and never leaving. And you can watch all of it in its entirety chronologically. It is amazing. It is. There's been multiple documentaries and a Lifetime movie made about it. None of it is good as just watching this footage for real. And this man who thinks he's going to get away with it, and the way he behaves, and the way his neighbor is just looking at him like, you did it. Like, there's no other explanation. Like, you're crazy and he thinks he's fooling everyone, and he's seeing all the steps he did. It's just, that stuff to me is amazing. And I can't get enough of it.
Have you seen the Netflix show Criminal UK? It's all interrogations. It's just interrogations, and it's a scripted show, but it's all just the interrogation. The whole like hour-long episode is just an interrogation about this one crime, and it's just a back and forth.
Oh, I'll
and
check
it
that
is
out.
so good. And they also have, I heard that Homicide: Life on the Street is on Peacock now, and Andre Braugher is key in that for those interrogations. So, yeah, but Criminal UK is good. Yeah,
My mom was an extra on Homicide. Baltimore boy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Richard Belzer? Does she have a scene with Belzer?
I think that she does. I think that she's in the background of like we're in a laundromat. And they were filming like Richard Belzer's in the front, and we're extras playing around in the back.
That's amazing.
oh,
Good times.
Richard Belzer plays an extra in The Wire.
yeah.
He's just sitting
Does
at
he
the
really?
bar in one of the scenes. Yeah. Just like your mom.
What a fascinating career that guy has had.
Yeah.
Starting as a stand-up comic, then playing the same character in like 90 different TV shows.
Yeah.
Very similar to Jerry Orbach, a Broadway legend who then
yeah.
became just a detective for the next 20 years of his life.
Yeah, and Lumiere.
Good work if you can get it. Good work if you can get it.
It's the best way,
Yeah.
I think. Coincidentally, I think the interrogation scene is the one I've shot the most in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very often the guy, I found my niche is playing the person that you just can't tell if they're the good guy or the bad guy. We don't want you to be the good guy. We don't want you to be the bad guy. We want you to be the guy we can't tell if they're good or bad. I seem to have that quality.
Does that bleed over into real life where you're just like, I don't know what I am anymore?
You look in the mirror. Who am I?
Yeah, well, no, they're clocking me before I'm even self-aware.
Yeah, they're like, no, we know what you are.
Exactly. Because it's interesting. You learn when you audition on those shows that you're talking about. The best actor is not going to get the role for the villain. The person who they don't think you'll think is the villain will get the role. Because that's more important than the acting is the second the Law and Order starts. If you're like, that's the bad guy, then the show's over and they have not done their job. Yeah. So often that's who gets the role. It's not necessarily, it's the person who has that quality.
Yeah. Unless it's an A-list actor coming in and they're like, okay, he did it. You see the name pop up. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's the guy.
Yeah.
They
don't
won't be
think,
here unless they did it.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think Johnny Depp is going to just be a side character in Law and Order this week. I don't think that's going to happen.
No, but his greatest performance of the last decade was during the Amber Heard trial. Was that not the most riveting? And could you not tell whether he was the good guy or the bad guy? And he did a pretty good job of convincing us he was the good guy.
Yeah,
and she did an incredible job of convincing us she was the bad guy. And though no one's ever going to know, only they know. We know for certain what it appears from the outside looking in is almost never what it is. Yeah. So whatever they did and whatever happened there worked out for him. Great performance. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, we'll never know.
When you have two actors on trial, I do not envy the people trying to judge.
Especially when with Amber Heard, it was like a definition of bad acting. It was like you could show her in a class where you're dealing with how do you cry, and you're just like, don't do that. When Amber Heard's talking about the bee that stung her dog, just don't do that. Whatever that is, makes people hate you.
It was an acting trial, if anything. It was like the best actor's going to win.
She failed that, and I don't know if that's because she's guilty or innocent. I have no idea. No one will know but them. But she gave such a horrible performance. We don't react to people trying to cry.
Yes.
We react to people trying not to cry. You watch someone trying not to cry, and it gets you.
Yeah.
You watch
it makes you try not to cry, too. Yeah.
Yeah. You watch someone cry, trying to cry, and you're like, just please stop that. Just making everyone uncomfortable.
So true. Oh man.
Well, we got anything else to say about villains here?
Great episode.
Yeah.
Good episode to go back to. Good. Yeah, sets off a lot of stuff. Just the back to back between Seeing Red and villains is just heavy hitters. Just heavy hitters in a heavy season. Yeah.
Yeah,
I loved seeing the scene with Andrew and Jonathan together in the prison. That was great.
Yes.
Butt monkey.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just good stuff, man. It was good to go back to that because I was a big fan of the trio as big bads. And it was great to like just see all of it come to a head once again. And it was great to talk to you, Adam. Adam, thanks so much.
Having me.
Thanks very much for coming and doing the podcast, man. Again, like we said, we were so stoked, and we were like, "This is the perfect guest for boys watching Buffy." Who do we get? The actor who embodied toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
So yeah, once again, please promote anything that you wanted to do. I know that you were talking about the record earlier.
Yeah, please check out "Peeled Back" by Ali Gertz. It's a great record.
Hell
I
yeah.
think anybody that likes this podcast will like that record.
Perfect.
Awesome. Yeah.
And yeah, that's a wrap, everybody. Thanks for listening. Join our Discord, join our Patreon where we're doing Angel, Boys Watching, patreon.com/Boys Watching Buffy. And we will see you next time for when we start Firefly. So yeah, look forward to that.
Very excited.
See y'all.
Thank you, boys.